Matthew Peanut Johnson, he was a very well-liked and beloved member of the community. But you don't expect to lose your life for stealing a car, an old car. He ran. He was unarmed, and he was shot in the back.
I pulled out the gun and I said, "No, listen, fellas, stop or I'm going to shoot." And the boy was running down the hill, and I put the gun in the air and I shot 3 times in the air, and then the boy was out 225, 250 feet, I guess, way out, and I shot one shot in his direction, and he was on top of a hill and he didn't come back or up from the other side of the hill, and I figured, well, I guess he's hiding down there, and I quickly ran down there and expected to find the boy kind of scared down there, and I ran down there and I saw the boy lying flat in his face and blood out of his mouth, and there wasn't very much you could do. It was all, I don't feel so good.
That was basically the fuse, if you will. The shooting was the fuse that lit a powder keg that led to the uprising in the community. Governor Pat Brown brought out 500 National Guards and had another 1,500 on the way.
We cannot have revolution in this country, and I can assure the people of my state that I will do everything within my power to see that law and order is observed and that the rights of person and property are carefully protected. And I'll tell you this, we're going to meet force with force.
And they come down with National Guards, trucks and police, and line both sides of the streets with rifles and point them up at the windows, and people had their families and kids looking out the window. Then they was saying get in, and had the guns and things, and rifles and things out pointing at the people in the windows, you know. And I don't think that was necessary.
It wasn't just the shooting alone that sparked the uprising in Bayview Hunters Point. It was the living conditions. It's being so harsh and lack of access.
We don't want to accept all this off-the-wall propaganda which you all have been giving us for the past 9 and 10 years. We want something concrete. We don't want it next week. We want it now.
The issues surrounding Black Americans back then had to do with the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which finally codified, you know, our wholeness to the degree that we had access to transportation. We had laws that barred people from stopping us from drinking at fountains and eating in restaurants. That was a liberating time. From there, people, based upon the law that now say I have civil rights, began to realize they didn't have to take all of the stuff that was being thrown their way.
In Hunters Point, as in most black communities, the burden of public responsibility has been shouldered largely by black women. The current leader of the local matriarchy is Mrs. Eloise Westbrook.
Miss Westbrook, to me, was the epitome of leadership in Bayview Hunters Point.
She is chairman of the Joint Housing Committee, a remarkable grassroots organization that has demanded and gotten real decision-making power over urban renewal on the Hill.
Eloise Westbrook had a big presence.
I want you to know that I am a black woman.
She was tall, she had a big voice.
I'm a mother, and I have 15 grandchildren.
And she did not hesitate to say what was on her mind.
I only have but one life to give, children. When I die, I'm dead. And you better believe it. But I'm dying for the rights of people.
She was herself at all times, and people knew that what they heard from her, they could believe.
Even though we have built these homes, and even though they are very beautiful, and we're trying to get people into them, one of the long-range plans is the Indian Basin area, where that we can have the industrial, that the people who live in this area might have jobs that they might obtain and live here forever and ever and ever.
And she found other women who were willing to stand up for their children and their grandchildren in that community.
There's this group that was called the Big Five. Eloise Westbrook, Osceola Washington.
I'm sorry to say no. These young men have grew up in this situation. Police brutality, poor schools, poor education, kick-outs mostly. They call them dropouts, but they're kick-out in Hunters Point.
Bertha Friedman.
But I think it's a great honor for these people that they can say, I have it myself, and I don't have to wait for a handout.
Ruth Williams.
And I'm here to say I'm from the ghetto community. All right, now I'm from the ghetto community, and at the sound of my voice, when I rise up, just about the masses of Hunters Point rises up too.
And Rosalie Williams. Those were considered the big five.
They decided that the blight and the need for new housing was so compelling that these 5 women who were considered powerhouses at the time had various types of gifts and control in their respective areas of influence.
I feel very upset because for so long we have been appealing to other funding agencies for monies, and it always seems as though there's something wrong with this particular organization or agency, and I think it's just because we're poor people trying. And the funding agencies like Ford and the United Crusade and all, they never give us anything.
I actually think that they surprised themselves at what they could do by just articulating the problems and talk about the broken promises.
They went to Washington, D.C. and met with the Senator Philip Burton, and they lobbied and advocated for him to get some money into San Francisco, this Bayview community, so that we can tear down those old public housing and get some new structures built.
And they would not leave Washington, D.C. until they brought back tens of millions of dollars to start what we see in Hunters Point today. It was their dream. There was a lot of pushback on whether they were going to release those funds back to Bayview Hunters Point. And I recall vividly Miss Westbrook saying that this belongs to the community. And if you're not careful, you may lose it.
I don't know how to describe these women because you wonder where they got their ideas about what was possible.
I said I wasn't gonna cry, but I've been crying ever since I stood on this here stage, because I know and you know that this is what we have dreamed for many years.